They are some of the oldest mountains on Earth, older than the Atlantic Ocean that now separates them from their twin ranges in Scotland and Morocco. Worn down by hundreds of millions of years of wind and rain, the Appalachians don't look dramatic the way the Rockies or the Alps do. They look tired, rounded, ancient. And for as long as people have lived among them, first the Cherokee and other indigenous nations, then European settlers pushing into the hollows and ridge lines, those same mountains have carried a reputation, a sense that something in these old forests doesn't behave the way it should. Glowing lights that move with no explanation, a winged figure with burning red eyes, hikers who vanish steps away from their families in broad daylight without a sound. This is a mini-documentary about the Appalachian Mountains, not the whole 2,000-mile range, but a handful of its strangest, most enduring mysteries. Some have partial explanations, some don't. All of them are still being talked about, decades, in some cases centuries later. Before the specific stories, it's worth understanding why the Appalachians produce so many of them. The range stretches from Alabama up into Canada, cutting through some of the densest, oldest forest cover left in North America. Unlike a lot of the American West, where distances are open and visibility stretches for miles, Appalachian terrain is close, folded, and disorienting. Deep hollows, steep ridgelines, and forest canopy, thick enough to blot out the sky even at midday. For early indigenous communities and later mountain settlers, that isolation shaped how stories were told. Long winters, remote homesteads, and limited contact with the outside world meant oral storytelling carried enormous cultural weight. Legends weren't entertainment. They were how communities processed the unknown dangers of the landscape around them, which hollows to avoid, which sounds meant a predator, which lights in the distance were just fireflies, and which weren't explained at all. Some legends in the region reach back to Cherokee oral tradition, long before the first European settlers arrived. Others emerged more recently, shaped by 20th century events, media coverage, and the same wave of American paranormal interest that gave us so much of our modern cryptid and UFO folklore. What ties them together is the landscape itself, dense, old, and easy to get lost in more ways than one. No Appalachian mystery is more famous than the Mothman. The story concentrates around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in November of 1966. On the night of November 15th, two young couples driving near an abandoned World War II munitions site, an area locals called the TNT area, reported something waiting for them on the side of the road, a large humanoid figure, roughly man-sized, with wings folded against its body and eyes that glowed a deep, unsettling red. According to their account, the creature didn't attack. It simply watched them. And then, as they sped away in their car, it reportedly followed, gliding alongside the vehicle at speeds well beyond what the witnesses expected any bird or animal to sustain. That first sighting wasn't the last. Over the following 13 months, more than 100 people in the Point Pleasant area came forward describing similar encounters. A winged, red-eyed figure near the same abandoned industrial site, sometimes seen from a distance, sometimes reportedly much closer. The sightings became a local sensation, then a regional one, drawing news coverage, curious visitors, and UFO researchers to a town that had never expected this kind of attention. Then, on December 15th, 1967, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Canoga, Ohio, collapsed during rush hour traffic, killing 46 people. The bridge collapse was later determined by engineers to be the result of a structural defect, A single failed eye-bar in the suspension chain, worsened by corrosion and the added stress of modern traffic loads the bridge was never designed to carry. But in the aftermath, a theory took hold that has followed the Mothman story ever since. That the creature's appearances weren't random. That its presence in the area for over a year was somehow tied to the disaster that followed. A kind of harbinger, appearing before catastrophe rather than causing it. Skeptical investigators have offered a more grounded explanation for the original sightings, that witnesses, driving at night near an abandoned industrial site, encountered a large bird, most likely a barn owl, whose reflective eyes can glow strikingly red or orange in headlights, and whose wingspan and silhouette, glimpsed briefly in poor lighting and high adrenaline, could plausibly be mistaken for something far stranger. That explanation accounts for a great deal. It doesn't fully explain the volume and consistency of sightings over more than a year, across many independent witnesses, in a town that had no particular reason to manufacture a shared hoax. Nearly 60 years later, Point Pleasant has embraced the legend rather than run from it, with an annual festival, a dedicated museum, and a 12-foot metallic statue of the creature standing in the middle of town. Whatever was or wasn't seen in 1966, Mothman became something the town chose to remember on its own terms. Not every Appalachian mystery involves a creature. Some of the most unsettling stories in these mountains involved nothing supernatural at all on the surface, just people who walked into the woods and never walked back out. The most well-known case is that of 6-year-old Dennis Martin, who vanished on Father's Day weekend, June 1969, in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Dennis was playing hide-and-seek with his father, brother, and 2 other families near Spence Field, along the Appalachian Trail, a heavily trafficked area well within sight of the group. He hid behind a tree for the game and simply never reappeared. What followed remains one of the largest search operations in National Park Service history. Thousands of volunteers, military personnel including Green Berets, tracking dogs and helicopters combing the area for weeks. They found no footprint, no clothing, no physical trace of any kind. To this day, Dennis Martin's disappearance remains officially unsolved. He isn't the only one. The Great Smoky Mountains alone have recorded other unexplained cases over the decades. 16-year-old Trenny Gibson, who disappeared in October 1976 while hiking with a school group. 58-year-old Thelma Pauline Melton, who vanished in September 1981 while hiking with friends along Deep Creek Trail. 23-year-old Derek Luking, who disappeared in March 2012 shortly after entering the park. Each case shares an unsettling thread, a person present accounted for, and then, within a short window, in a populated and searched area, simply gone. These cases, and others like them across the Appalachian Range, have become associated with a broader phenomenon researcher David Paulides named Missing 411, a term describing clusters of unexplained disappearances in and around U.S. national parks and wildlands, first documented in his books beginning in 2012. Paulides, a former police officer, has cataloged more than 1,000 such cases and identified recurring patterns he considers unusual. Bodies discovered at improbable distances from where a person was last seen, disappearances clustering near bodies of water, and cases where trained search dogs reportedly struggled to pick up any scent trail at all. Paulides' work has been influential in popularizing these cases, but it's also been widely challenged. Critics, including many search and rescue professionals, point out that national parks see roughly 300 million visitors a year, many poorly prepared for genuinely dangerous terrain. Steep drop-offs, dense brush, fast-moving water, and wildlife encounters that can scatter remains over wide areas through natural scavenging behavior. From that view, tragic as each case is, most disappearances have mundane, if heartbreaking, explanations. Falls, drowning, exposure, or wildlife. Even when a body is never recovered in terrain this rugged. What's harder to dismiss is the emotional weight these cases carry for the families still waiting for answers. In Dennis Martin's case, for more than 55 years. Whether the explanation is ultimately environmental or something researchers haven't yet identified, the Appalachian wilderness has proven, again and again, capable of swallowing a person whole and giving nothing back. Beyond Mothman and the missing, the Appalachians hold a whole constellation of smaller, older mysteries. The Brown Mountain Lights. In western North Carolina, Brown Mountain, a low, unremarkable ridge, has been the site of mysterious floating lights reported for well over a century, with some accounts tracing back to the late 1800s. Witnesses describe glowing orbs, sometimes still, sometimes drifting, appearing over the ridge on clear nights with no obvious source. Explanations have piled up over the decades, reflections from distant town lights, headlamps of trains and cars refracted through humidity, swamp gas, even ball lightning or unusual atmospheric electrical activity. Researchers from the Appalachian Regional Commission and local universities have attempted to map the phenomenon with modern sensors. None of the explanations offered so far account for every reported sighting, and the lights remain officially unresolved. Cherokee oral tradition offers its own account, describing the lights as connected to a great and bloody battle fought on the mountain between Cherokee and Catawba warriors. The lights said to be the spirits of the fallen, still searching the ridge. The Flatwoods Monster. In September of 1952, in Flatwoods, West Virginia, a group of local boys and a National Guardsman's wife reported encountering a towering figure with a glowing orb-like head and clawed hands near a hillside where they'd seen a fiery object come down. The encounter left several witnesses reporting nausea and irritated eyes afterward. Investigators who looked into the case, including paranormal researcher Joe Nickel, later proposed a more grounded chain of events, a meteor streaking through the sky, combined with a startled barn owl, its face in the beam of a flashlight, capable of producing an eerily humanoid glowing impression, and the very real chemical irritation of nearby vegetation. It's a tidy explanation for a strange night, but like so many of these cases, it hasn't fully closed the book for everyone who's studied it. The Wampus Cat and the Wood Booger Older still are the region's cryptid legends. The Wampus Cat, described as a cougar-like creature that moves upright like a person, tied in some tellings to Cherokee legend as a woman cursed for spying on a sacred ceremony. And the Wood Booger, Appalachia's own regional cousin to Bigfoot, a tall, hair-covered ape-like figure reported in the deep forests of Virginia and North Carolina, distinct enough in local tradition to Bigfoot. A tall, hair-covered ape-like figure reported in the deep forests of Virginia and North Carolina. The Moon-Eyed People, and older than all of them in Cherokee oral history, are the Moon-Eyed People, a pale, nocturnal people said to have lived underground, their large eyes unable to bear direct sunlight, appearing only under moonlight. Some tellings connect them to stone ruins found at sites like Fort Mountain in Georgia, structures whose origin remains genuinely debated among historians and archaeologists. Some folklorists have speculated about connections to pre-Columbian contact. Most historians remain skeptical of specific claims about who built the walls, treating the Moon-Eyed People primarily as a rich piece of Cherokee oral tradition rather than a literal historical record. Why the mountains keep their skirts? What connects a winged cryptid, a missing 6-year-old, and floating lights on a ridge that's been blowing since before electricity reached these hollows? Partly, it's geography. Dense, ancient, and genuinely disorienting terrain gives every one of these stories room to survive. Enough truth in the landscape's real danger and real strangeness that skepticism alone has never fully closed any of these cases. Partly it's culture, Appalachians' oral storytelling tradition, passed through Cherokee history, then through generations of isolated mountain communities, never needed the internet to keep a legend alive. These stories were surviving and evolving long before message boards and YouTube gave them a global audience, and partly it's the mountain's age. The Appalachians are some of the oldest exposed rock on the planet, worn down over hundreds of millions of years into something that looks gentle from a distance and disorienting the moment you're actually inside it. That contradiction, beautiful and unpredictable at the same time, might be the real source of every story in this video. Some of these mysteries have partial, plausible explanations. A startled owl, a structural engineering failure, the tragic but explainable dangers of wilderness terrain. Others, like Dennis Martin's disappearance, or the exact nature of the Brown Mountain Lights, remain genuinely open more than half a century later. Maybe that's simply what these mountains do. They're old enough, deep enough, and forgotten enough in places to hold on to their mysteries far longer than most modern landscapes get to. If you've ever spent a night in the Appalachians, camping, hiking, or just passing through a small mountain town, did you hear a story like these from a local, or do you have one of your own? Let me know in the comments. These mountains have kept their secrets for centuries, but every story someone shares is one more piece of the picture.